John, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. Probably out of one of the guests that we've had on this series, you probably go out without probably an introduction because you're well known to the sort of local non-league football community. You've been manager at Rami, a Bury fan for your life as well. Talking Radcliffe today though, last season, you're first in the National League North. For Radcliffe as a club, obviously you've managed there previously. How do you sort of evaluate that season overall, which was ended in a sort of just above the relegation places?
It was tough, and if I'm honest with you, when I reflect back, and when me and Bern have spoke about it, when we reflected together, it was tougher than we expected it to be. I think there was quite a few mitigating reasons as to it. We didn't win for the first 10 games, but we had an injury crisis that I've never experienced before in 17 years of management. It was extraordinary. We had a brilliant pre-season. I think we beat Oldham, we beat Halifax, drew with Fylde. And then the first week of pre-season, we lose Nicky Adams, Ollie Thornley. We had centre-halves playing central midfield. We had forwards playing out wide. And it was just one of them things, everything we worked on just seemed to fall in that week building up to the first game. First game drew 3-3. Duds, an ex-Bury player, equalised last minute. So you can imagine the emotions of the game at the end. But then the second, third game of the season, we played Kidderminster and Chester away. So it was a real baptism of fire in terms of a small football club being welcome to the big league and playing them two type of football clubs. And if you include Scarborough as well, it's 3 ex-league clubs. And as I said, with the personnel we had missing, we lacked some real leadership in them games when we went behind. And no different than, and obviously talking about Bury, but when you play your Burys, your Chesters, your Herefords, your Kiddies, when they get a goal, especially when it's early, the noise the crowd makes, I don't think the home fans ever understand the impact it has on the opposition. And that happened to us in the first couple of games. But listen, we got to grips with it. We picked up some really positive results. We picked up the most points against any team in the league from the two teams that win promotion. But the word tough is the one that comes to mind. In reality, we actually stayed up quite comfortably. I think we stayed up by 15 points. So when you look at the actual game when we stayed up, it was like the back end of February, early March. But when you live in it and you're in it, you always feel like you're going to lose every game and they're going to win every game. But it was a tough season, but one that we needed, I think, especially for me and Bern, who've only ever had success at this level, to realise how big that step up is from the NPL into National League North.
You mentioned sort of how tough you found it. How many learning curves can you take from last season and bring it into this campaign?
I think the toughest thing we found was the Saturday to Tuesday, because obviously it's a 46 game season, and when you put in the cups as well, the FA Cup, the FA Trophy, and then your county cups, etc. We played 25 Tuesdays. Well, the season's only 37. So for 12 weeks of the season, we only got a Tuesday and a Thursday training session. Every other time, we was training as much as Tottenham United. And when you think about that, in the level that we were at, it's quite extraordinary. So that was the big thing, was in between a Saturday game and a Tuesday game. We had no contact with the players, really. So we have to think outside the box as a part-time team, a part-time football club, and as do the others, as how we can bridge that gap. And we spent a lot of time on that, how we can do that, whether that be video footage of the game you've just played and then how you do it for the game coming up. So we spent loads of time on that. When we previously managed this at this level, it was only 42 games, so it's the first time we've actually experienced at this level 46 game season. And when you're playing away at a full-time outfit on a Tuesday night, as the South Shield's an example, it's a tough ask. So that was probably the biggest learning point of last season. And the proof will be in the pudding with what we put into place in between now and when the season starts for them Saturday, Tuesday games. But there's some big football clubs with big support bases, with big expectations. And that can work both ways, can't it? I think from our point of view, we went to Scunthorpe, drew 0-0, we missed a penalty in the 95th minute, and then we beat them here. So I think that expectation on them, and I've been there with Chester as well, when the supporters' expectations are so high, and they feel just because of the name of the opposition, Radcliffe, Curzon, Leamington, I've been a part of it and now I've been against it, where the expectation is that they should roll over. But what you forget is that on that day, that as a bigger football club, you're everyone's cup final. So people raise the game on that game. They shouldn't do. Everyone's standards should be the same every game. But naturally, against your bigger football clubs, players just raise the standards. It's just the nature of how it goes.
There's a lot of I suppose, that full-time, part-time difference in the National League North and the National League South as well. I suppose it's that league where it's that sort of in-between stage between part-time and professional. How do you bridge that gap when you've got to plan ahead? Because in any probably 4-week period, you could be playing fully full-time sides, you could be playing a combination of both, you could be playing all part-time sides like yourself. How does that come into the planning and preparation from you and the management?
Well, it's, when you think about it, it's the most diverse league now, north and south, in terms of models in the whole pyramid system. So essentially, the National League now, I think, is pretty much 95% full-time. There might be one, maybe two part-time sides, and even then the hybrid. At our level, you've got 7 full-time sides, and then you've got 2 hybrid sides. Now, what hybrid 3 mornings a week? They're only 1 morning away from being full-time. So 9 of your clubs are getting daytime contact training. And it isn't always about what you're doing on the pitch, it's the recovery side. So they're not having to go to work. And I know people hate it when the FA Cup comes on and the commentators almost, it sounds disparaging how they talk about the local butcher and the lad who works in a factory playing against a load of full-time footballers. But that's what you come up against. You know, a lot of the part-time clubs, and there's more part-time than hybrid and full-time in our league, are going to work on a Tuesday before a Tuesday night game and on a Friday when you should be prepping. But that's what it is. There's no point moaning about it. There's no point bleating and saying it's an unfair advantage. A club like us is always thinking about the growth and what's next and how do we get to that point. So during the actual season, it's very difficult to bridge the gap. You can't. But as you grow as a football club, we're looking at ways of thinking outside the box, as I said before, how we do bridge that gap in the future. So first and foremost, we want to become a football club that's established at this level. You know, we've done 1 year now. I think there's a real danger at Warrington Town and Rushall Olympic both had 2 years and then got relegated. So that's always there. So we want to establish ourselves like Chorley have done over the years, like Curzon Ashton have done over the years at this level. And then how do we push on? You know, is that somewhere down the line that as a football club this size can potentially go full time? I'm not sure at this moment in time, but we've got to embrace the challenge. We've got to embrace the underdog mentality. And we've got to work smart in the sense of what do we do on our Saturday nights and Sundays and Mondays when these are training but we're going to work. So you're always thinking about that stuff. My opinion, it's just my opinion on it, is that the jump from the MPL to the National League North is the biggest jump outside of probably the Championship to the Premier League. You know, you often see the National League to League 2. They go in there and not dominate, but are in the top half generally. The jump from MPL to National League North is absolutely huge. And quite often, Needham Market as an example last year, who did what we did but in the South League, got relegated. So you always worry of that, of yes, you've got the momentum of having a great season the season before, but if you take it too far, which I think we did last summer, not concentrating on what was in front of us, that you can get a shock early doors. So it's thinking outside the box a lot with it.
How do you evaluate your pre-season campaign so far?
Well, we only started last Tuesday, so obviously it's Wednesday today, and we started last Tuesday against Avro. What we do for our first 2 weeks of pre-season is just training. The first 2 weeks of the game time is 45 minutes, and then as of Sunday when we play, that becomes our next week. So we play Ulti on Friday, that'll be 45 minutes. And then on Sunday we play either Fleetwood or Isle of Man, and then Tuesday we play Halifax. The minutes will start to up, if you will. We had a tough game against Avro. In fairness, it was their third game when we played them, and it was tough, but it's what we needed. We played Avro a couple of times. It's always the same. We had a game on Saturday against Squires Gate where what everyone expected to happen happened, where we dominated. And last night was the perfect game where the opposition expose you. You find your weaknesses, but that's what you're looking for. You don't play Crewe to try and treat it as a cup final. You want to get exposed. So when we go to train on Thursday, and when we watch the video back, we've got things to work on, and that'll happen again against Alty. It'll work if we get Fleetwood, and it'll work against Halifax. So I've been dead pleased with the way we've looked when they've come back in. Everyone's looked after themselves. The programme that they've been given. The performance last night against Crewe was absolutely unbelievable for an hour, and I mean I was so pleased with how we looked at possession, because you know what Crewe are like. You know Crewe are keeping the ball. But when we won the ball back on the turnover, we were outstanding as well. So it was really good for an hour. Quality paid off, as it did from us and Squires Gate on Saturday, for 20 minutes, and they punished us. But that's why we have them games. We want to get exposed. So it's gone well. I'm really, really pleased with where we're at. Might be different by the time we play you guys in a couple of weeks, but it's been good so far.
You brought some new faces into the squad. One ex-Bury player in Callum McFadden. How's he settled into your group?
Really well. You know, he's probably the one where he looks like he's been with us for years. He's just so unassuming. You know, when you think about where he's played, his past, his history, there's no arrogance in how he plays. Everything's about, first and foremost, being the hardest working player on the pitch. His numbers reflect that. In terms of data, he's been phenomenal. So when you've had a lad like Scott Duxbury, who's now with you guys, played in a similar position for so long under me and Byrne, you know, over the last couple of years with Radcliffe and now he's with us at Spennymoor, it's difficult when you lose a lad like that and you have to replace him, but it's been so seamless, and to get that quality, because I remember watching Bury against Luton in the FA Cup when Luton were coming through the leagues, and it was probably the single best performance I ever watched from a Bury side. They got beaten in the end 1-0, but they were outstanding, and Fads played at left wing back that day. Nicky Adders played right wing back, and I couldn't believe how good Bury were in particular, but Callum's performance that day. So it always stuck in my mind. So to get him on board at 31-year-old, I know he's had a year out, but 31-year-old to get someone in the prime, who, with the experience that he's got, it's a manager's dream, really.
And looking at the group, are you happy with where you're at, or are you looking to add further faces?
It's funny because walking off the pitch last night, we were talking to Lee Bell, the crew manager, and he said we were actually more experienced than them. You know, when you look at the personnel where we just discussed about Callum McFadden and Dan Gardner, David Ball, John Taylor, the experience that they've got from the Football League and past experiences is phenomenal to see, and you see that with the quality. But we're always looking to add. We're always looking to add quality to the group, but you've also got to know when to say no, because people can see what we're doing. You come down, it's a good setup. The pitch is the best, in our opinion, non-league. So players want to come and play it, but we've got a strong squad. We've got a trialist with us at this moment in time that, you know, we're hoping something happens with that. But we've got some real quality, and it seems to be a really well-gelled group, even at this early. When you consider the amount of players that we let go last year and brought in probably half that number, it's gelled pretty quickly.
Many Bury fans will remember the FA Cup tie, which was quite a competitive game, both sides doing well on the pitch. How different is your squad now compared to that game back at the sort of the start to middle of last season?
I've got to be careful how I word this, so I don't want to come across as being disrespectful to Bury, because I thought that day Bury were outstanding. I thought you could see what they worked on, how they nullified us. I remember we went 1-0 up in the game at half time. The work ethic from the team, the subs at the right time, how they saw the game out. Listen, you've got a good football manager, you've got a good coach at Bury, let's be clear with that. But I was so impressed. But to answer that question, even now without the signings, we had a few injuries as well, and Bury really exposed us with that. Lads that weren't where they should have been. And I think the add-on of what happened the week before as well, from an emotional draining point of view, in my opinion, played its part. It especially did for me. So, you know, I can only assume how everyone else was feeling. But we've added, since that game last season, 3 or 4 lads, and then we've obviously had another 4 or 5. So the squad's much different, as Bury's is, by the way. You know, Bury looked much stronger than when they beat us last year as well. So we look much different. We'll still try and play our way, but that works both ways. You know, listen, at the end of the day, it's a friendly. You're not scouting each other. You're not, you know, watching what Bury are going to do to try and stop them. We're going to play our way, and Bury are going to play their way, because we've got 3 points on the line a couple of weeks after. So it should make for a good game. Quite a few of the lads all know each other anyway, whether that be on the pitch or off the pitch, and it should be fascinating.
You mentioned the emotional side to that game last September. Obviously, it was the first game for Radcliffe off the back of the then chairman Paul Hilton passing away. This game between Bury and Radcliffe is now going to be a yearly tradition in Paul's name, alternating between here at the Newton Stadium and at Gig Lane. Just from your perspective, how important is it to remember Paul, not just sort of with his off-the-pitch legacy and what he's developed, not just here at Radcliffe, but in the wider sort of non-league football scale, but also celebrating him with what ultimately he enjoyed doing, watching 90 minutes of football?
Yeah, it's a strange one because the day the draw got made, obviously it was on Monday, he was the first person to ring me. Because obviously from my point of view, we're all local lads. Bernard's a local lad, but he's a City fan, and everyone knows where my allegiances have lay for my whole life. So Paul was the first one to ring me. And he was so excited. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. He was so excited for me, but more for the wider community of two football clubs from more or less from the same borough, being drawn against each other, and us being a higher placed team in the pyramid. It was a dream tie for all of us, I think, for Bury and for Radcliffe people. But what happened, obviously, 5 days later, you know, it's going to stick with us all forever. You know, it's probably it is the most harrowing phone call I've ever had in my life. It was traumatic. You know, Bern's known Paul since they were kids. So Bernard's family, who are Radcliffe born and bred, we're very close to Paul and the family. I've come to know Paul over the last 5 or 6 years through football and the community. And it was just, until you're involved in a football club like this, a smaller football club, and how close knit Marcus, the owner, Paul, Billy, who's obviously now taken up the position what Paul had, were, without knowing how tight and close our group was, it's hard to really understand. That's what this football club's been built on, is them relationships. And it was traumatic. It was really tough to understand and get your head around. But we still had a game of football and a season to complete. And I think, when I think back to the game, I remember my team talking, and it's full of regrets, because you're saying things like, let's do it for Paul, but then almost you lose the game and it's almost like, well, we didn't do it for Paul. And you shouldn't do that. We should never put that onto the players from a mental standpoint, do that. But I think what we did as a football club, what Bury did as a football club, what the supporters did on the day was the perfect tribute to a great man. You know, it was unbelievable, the respect shown to Paul and his family, who were all here that day and walked onto the pitch. So it was a tough one to take, but it was a perfect send off for Paul. And the fact that we've now got this annual game, alternating, as you said, between the two football clubs, is the perfect honour for me, of a proper football man and a great human being.
How will his wider legacy stay at this football club for years to come?
Well, Paul was the brainchild of what you see across the road, Red Bank, where we have our own facility now, our own training facility, our own junior setup, which I'm pretty certain is one of the biggest in the northwest of England. It's named after him. He was the man that cut the ribbon. He was the man that came up with the ideas. So when you talk about legacy, in 50 years' time, that centre, we're hoping he'll still be there, standing strong, where generations of children have come through, just to be able to play with that Radcliffe shirt on. Whether they ever make it for the first team, or they make it for the women's first team, or they end up being Bury fans, or they play for Bury, or wherever they end up going, Paul's legacy gives that platform for children and grassroots football to thrive for decades to come.
Just going back to the season ahead to finish us off, Jonno, what's a good season going to be for Radcliffe this year?
Listen, we just talk about progression all the time as a football club on and off the pitch. We talked about it before, what it looks like in the future to compete with bigger football clubs. How do we do that? How do we bridge that gap? But on the football pitch, from our point of view, mine and Bernard's point of view, where we're getting employed to come up with the right results, it's about progression. You know, we all want to win the league. It's as simple as that. We want to win the league. The likelihood of that happening, Willie Mill and Sky Bet will tell you what that is that in a few weeks' time. But we want to really test ourselves, push ourselves. We wouldn't bring the quality of players in that we have done if we weren't aiming high. But everything's about progression. As I said before, we want to establish ourselves as a National League North football club. We want to make some noise. And we believe with the structure and the setup that we do have on the pitch and off the pitch, we can give that a good go.
Jonno, thanks very much for your time today.
Top man.